This is one of my early books, and the result of a combination of four people, actually. Robin and Sally Hurst were at the Melbourne Museum, and they're astronomers. Roland Harvey used to be a children's illustrator, and Joe Levine worked in advertising. So Robin and Sally wrote the story and had the concept of telling where we live in space. So we live in this house here somewhere, and that's part of this village, which is part of and so we step out into space, and it's explaining how space works. So Joe did all these illustrations here. Robin and Sally developed the concept and the story. We all worked on it together, actually. And then I did the silly stuff here. So it locates us on Earth down here, things going on. And then in the background, the sky is showing what the bit that we're talking about. My place in space. Not long ago, Henry and Rosie Wilson were waiting for a bus. The bus roared around the corner, and with a sudden swerve toward the curb and a hiss of the brakes, it stopped in front of them. The door swung back, and the tall and rather scruffy driver peered down at Henry and Rosie. "Who are you?" asked the driver, "and where would you like to go?" "I'm Henry Wilson, and this is my sister Rosie," said Henry. "We'd like a ride home, please." "Home?" asked the driver loudly, imitating Henry's voice and raising his eyebrows. Henry felt his face go red. He laughed and winked at two women on the front seat of the bus. They giggled. "Do you know where you live, Henry Wilson?" the driver's voice boomed. The giggling women stared at Henry, waiting for his reply. Henry gritted his teeth and took a deep breath. "Yes, I do know where we live. We're at number 12 Main Road, Gumbridge. Our house is on the north side of Main Road. The town of Gumbridge is just over the river from here, about 20 kilometres south of the Dividing Range." The driver's grin faded slightly. Henry took a deep breath and continued. "Gumbridge is a typical country town in Australia. Australia is in the southern hemisphere of the planet Earth," continued Henry. The women in the front seat had stopped giggling, and their mouths were gaping rather foolishly. So was the bus drivers. "The planet Earth is one of the 8 major planets which circle the star we call the Sun. Earth is the 3rd planet from the Sun, 150 million kilometres away from it. It takes 8 minutes for the sun's light to travel from the Sun to the Earth. That may seem a long way, but it's 4,500 million kilometres to Neptune, the 8th planet from the Sun. Sunlight takes over 4 hours to reach Neptune." "Shall I tell him about Pluto?" asked Rosie. Henry nodded. Rosie turned to the driver. "In case you're wondering why Henry didn't mention Pluto," she said, "it's now called a dwarf planet." The driver said nothing, even though his jaw was moving up and down. "We call the Sun and planets our solar system. Our solar system is in the middle of a group of stars we call the solar neighbourhood. Our Sun's neighbours are stars of all colours and sizes. You can see them in the dark skies of Gumbridge on any clear night," said Henry. "The nearest star to the Sun that we can see is called Alpha Centauri. Even though it's the closest, it takes over 4 years for its starlight to reach our Sun. Other stars, like the big red star Antares, are right out on the edge of the solar neighbourhood, about 600 light years away. That means it takes 600 years for the light to reach us," said Rosie. She smiled at Henry and took another deep breath. "The solar neighbourhood is just a small part of the Orion Arm," said Rosie. "Stars aren't spread out evenly in space. They hang around in groups. Our Sun is one star in a group of millions of stars that make a giant curved shape in space. The curve is called the Orion Arm. In amongst the stars are huge clouds of dust and glowing gases. You can see the dust clouds from Gumbridge too," said Henry. "They look like dark patches in the very starry parts of the sky. The driver checked his watch. He looked as though he was about to say something, but Henry quickly continued. The Orion arm is just one of the arms of a huge group of about 300,000 million stars. The whole group is called the Milky Way galaxy. If you think it's a long way to the nearest star, that's nothing. It takes light 100,000 years to cross from one side of the Milky Way galaxy to the other. 100,000 years just for the light to get from there to there. The Milky Way galaxy is called a spiral galaxy because it's of the way its arms make a spiral shape. Henry and Rosie demonstrated the spiral arms. Of course, the Milky Way isn't the only galaxy of stars in space. There are 30 galaxies in our local group of galaxies. Ours is the second largest. It's called the Andromeda Galaxy. It's a spiral galaxy too, said Henry, making more spiral shapes with his arms. Light from the stars in the Andromeda Galaxy takes over 2 million years to reach our galaxy. Most of space is just that, space, added Rosie. The bus driver looked very puzzled indeed. The two women on the front seat were staring at the driver, whose cheeks were turning slightly red. Our local group of galaxies is just part of a huge group of galaxies called the Virgo supercluster. It takes light a few million years to cross our local group of galaxies, but it can take a few 100 million years to cross from one side of a supercluster to the other. Whoa. The driver's face was now a bright shade of red, and he was shaking his head from side to side. With one more deep breath and a quick smile, Henry waved both his arms to make a large circle and said triumphantly, "And the whole universe is filled with superclusters of galaxies." Rosie stepped in front of Henry. She put her hands on her hips and pushed out her chest. "So we do know where we live," she said. "We live at 12 Main Road, Gumbridge, Australia, Southern Hemisphere, Earth, Solar System, Solar Neighbourhood, Orion Arm, Milky Way Galaxy, Local Group of Galaxies, Virgo Supercluster, the Universe." "May we have our tickets, please?" asked Henry.